Okay, this is the new small block Chevy Dino. This is a 421. Of course, it's got my heads on it. These are the 248 Dragon Slayers. These are standard valve spacing. They do have a wing in them. They require the shaft rocker, so this one does. However, this particular customer, because this guy is a customer and he had sent this in for testing, but this one he'd ordered both bolt patterns for the headers. So we have the stall, as you could tell, but it's also got the standard. So it's testing with the 1 3/4 and these ones, which I'm gonna measure, but I think they're actually 2-inch, but I'll measure first. Of course, it's got the Holley Pro Dominator up top. I ported this, and as you can tell, it's been welded because they made it bigger. Some Braswells, these are only 750. This is a solid roller cam. It's only 11.3 compression ratio though. The solid roller cam, I can't remember the specs off the top of my head, although I did sell it to him because I expected it to him. It's a comp cams. I think it's like a 258 and some, I think it's like 270 something exhaust, 110 lobe separation, about 750 lift. Really stout, 730 horsepower on pump gas. Yeah, this is nice. By the way, this is the front distributor drive. I don't know where he got this from. I think Shaver Specialties, but it's neat because it's not in the back. You have to have this plug to drive the distributor, which, as you can tell, what he has is these lines come off to do spring oilers, which we disconnected. But anyway, you still have to have a plug to turn the oil pump, which is what that is. But yeah, this is I'm pretty proud of myself for doing the heads. You might say, what's this? Why don't you do a vacuum pump? Because it interfered over here. Eventually we'll test that, but yeah, this thing's nice. So the new small block Chevy Dino Mule. Now that LS got to step up its game, we've got to get it.
Here's the actual cam card. Yeah, I totally messed up. This one actually is a 256, 268. Now, if you look at the lift on the cam, it looks like 660. That's not it. It's because these rocker ratio that we have on there is a 1.7 ratio on intake, 1.6 on exhaust. So that actually yields a 750 lift on intake and 705, I think, on exhaust. So that's what the actual cam card is. And yeah, it's small. Matter of fact, this camshaft is smaller than the one that was used in the 406 Dyno Mule. So it's surprising that it made the power that it did. But yeah, it's pretty nice. In case you're wondering, why did you go so small? Well, I think initially this customer, which is kind enough to let me use this for dyno testing, he wanted something to drive around and make good power and pull the 7,000. Well, obviously, as you'll see later with the dyno sheets, it pulls the 7,000 no problem. It does peak a little bit earlier, but it's right there. So it's a really good kind of a tinier camshaft. You might also say, why did you do that? This is a me thing as far as cam specs, but usually when you've got a bigger head and it flows a lot of air, you could back down the duration and make things work. So that's kind of the philosophy I had for this. I think eventually what we'll try is a much larger camshaft as far as duration, like something like 266 on the intake and probably a 278 on exhaust, and see if we can't get the power to move up in the 7,400 range, just to see what will happen. But anyway, that's later on. This is the engine, just to give it a little bit more specs. I don't think I did probably the greatest there doing that one, but it's a 421, so it's a 4155 bore, 3875 stroke. It's got maul pistons with there are the nicer maul pistons. They've got the smaller ring pack. I think they're like 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 3 millimeter. Good stuff. It's hard to see from this photo, but it's actually got one of the best wet sump oil pans. That's that Moroso, the billet aluminum one. Nice piece. So windage is definitely taken care of. The front driver on the distributor, that's just something he got. Just kind of like let's give this a shot. That's supposed to make more power. From my end, it makes things way easier because I could change the intake without having to worry about phasing the distributor or even getting it in there at all. And the timing is done by the crank trigger, so it's really nice. So for future intake manifold tests, this will be very helpful. The headers that are on there we started off with initially are the 1 3/4 dyno headers that we've been using forever. This entire thing was tested on 91 octane with a splash of 110. In other words, 15 gallons of 91 octane and like 1 gallon of 110. So it's hardly any. Timing was only set at 36 degrees because there's a bit more to the story, and you can watch the previous videos for this. But we thought that there was a problem with the engine, or at least the customer did. So we weren't really trying to maximize power on this deal. The only thing that we actually even changed was the jetting on the carburetor just to go down, which did bring up power, but it never even changed timing just because it was just kind of making sure that the engine was okay. But it was pretty neat. Some of the things I want to go over is I mentioned the wing, and you're like, what are you even talking about? Now, the heads are on that 421. Those were ported by hand, so I did them by hand. So for the longest time, for years and years and years, I did all the porting by hand, which I still do. So
So don't get me wrong, I still do, but I actually now have a CNC program for them. In other words, I created one by hand, sent it off to be digitized and ported, and that's what this one currently is. So this one's slightly different than it's on there, but this will explain what I'm talking about with the wing. This is the wing. As you can tell, it's on the floor there. See that little bump there? This actually helps with the airflow and stuff. It does a whole lot of things. I could do a whole long video just actually on that wing, but that's essentially what it is right there. You can't put them in just anything, and they have to go in a specific spot. And that took a lot of playing around with to get it in the right area. And it's really tricky. How wide it is, how long it is. It's a bit tricky, but once you get it, it's pretty good. So this one, these heads actually, in fact, the CNC ones, because I spent so much time to getting that, I know they're perfect. I should point out that the ones that were used in this video, I did them by hand, and it took a lot of playing around to get them where they are. And it's really hard to grind this by hand. Because remember, they start off with a stock Dragon Slayer that doesn't even have a wing. So you have to create this by hand, grinding it, not adding material. You're grinding it to make it. It's very difficult. So that's what that wing stands for. So I did a whole lot that didn't have the wing. So for instance, that was a 248. 248 without a wing would just be smooth across here. And the reason why I offered it both ways is because obviously it takes longer to grind that by hand. So having it flat across, it was a little bit cheaper than putting the wing in by hand. You can't put them in everything, like I said. So, but my CNC ones have them, both the 40-60 and the standard spacing one. Now let's talk about that exhaust part. This is what I meant about the pattern for it. So when you get a Dragon Slayer from the factory, they'll have this standard pattern that you see here. What they don't have is these ones. These can be added, but it's usually like a $300 upgrade. You might say, why would you even add them? You could just run spacer plates. Spacer plates, for one, are a pain in the rear, and usually they leak. Two, they also extend it out, so sometimes your headers don't clear very well. And, well, $300 is about the same price you pay. Sorry about that. The compressor decided to kick on. So back to what I was saying, you can add these for $300. This particular set, which is the one that doesn't require stud mounts, this one I'm actually offering a discount on. Usually I charge it for. I'm not going to charge extra for this one because this is one of the prototypes ones. This will be available probably in a week. I do have a standard set that is available that doesn't have this pattern though, the stall one that is available right now. I just have to mill them and put them together. But anyway, the biggest reason is you can run a bigger header tube. So for all the dyno tests we've been doing, we've been using the 1 3/4 dyno headers because you really are limited in this part right here because where the bolts are, you can't make the port much wider. So you're kind of stuck. You just are. With the stall, obviously you can go to bigger ones. So having it that, we can now run the bigger header, which Gary had there, and they were 2-inch headers. Here are the flow numbers for the heads. So these are flowed on my Signs D680 bench. This one's the more conservative one. I actually had the flow numbers from the Superflow 750. I'm just not including them here because they flow better on the Superflow 750. They're like 350. But anyway, what you see here, and it looks a little confusing, column number 1 is just a flow from the heads. That's all it is. Column number 2, what he had me do was flow the heads, but attach the intake manifold unported. So as you could tell, the flow drops off quite a bit. Column 3 is the ported intake manifold. So now I've taken that manifold, I ported it, welded it, and flowed it with it that way. So that's column 3. So that's actually how it's running in the engine. And then you can see the exhaust below that. Now this is a 2125 intake valve and it has a 1.575 exhaust valve. So let me show you the dyno results from just using the 1 3/4, so the smaller one first. Let me go ahead and show you the dyno results from that. So here's the results with the 1 3/4 headers. Ignore the air-fuel ratio. We only had the air turbine hooked up on one. Like I said, we weren't even so certain that there wasn't something wrong with the engine. At least that's what he said. There's nothing wrong with the engine, but that air-fuel ratio, it's only on one carburetor, and it's not right. So just ignore that altogether. We're actually watching an O2 sensor, which through some of the videos, you can kind of see it on the back. And it's between 12.5, 12.8. We did have to take some jet out to make that happen. But anyway, that's it. Really good power, though, for a 1 3/4 header. Here is the larger headers. These are 2-inch. They're the stall pattern, so they could fit on it. Bolts right on. And yeah, they're going to pick up quite a bit of power, which you're about to see. So let me go ahead and show you that dyno result.
As you can tell, it made a huge difference. So we gained like 20 horsepower. And I've done a lot of header testing, but I really haven't ever seen it gain this much. Especially moved it up on the top end. It even made more torque as well. I mean, it gained pretty much from 5,200 RPM, which we kind of expect from the larger headers. But it also made it carry that peak so much better. Really, really good. Really, really, really good with this header. So the overlay, let me go just show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. The red line's the 1 3/4 headers. The black line's the 2-inch headers. It's pretty easy to see where they cross over, and then the bigger headers are just better, and they carry the power so much better. So just something to keep in mind. Definitely faster probably at the drag strip, but interesting nonetheless. The last thing I'll show you is this is a stock Holley Pro Dominator tunnel ram. So I had actually done testing with the 406 with this one in particular. So you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. This whole ridge here, I welded up. And the reason why is I even welded it all the way to here. That's why you see some of the bead here. So after welding, obviously I had to, this is 2-piece. I had to mill off the top because it warps it. So I'll mill it down so it gets back flat again. But the biggest reason is if you look in here, you have a D. So we got rid of that square. It's a much larger opening now. And it obviously it works better at doing it that way. Straighter shot. A lot of porting, a lot of grinding would have broke through. So that's the reason for it. But this is it. And also, if you could kind of tell from the top view, they're kind of angled off. For whatever reason, this tunnel ram has been my favorite one. It was the best on the 406. And it was, so far, it's really good on the 421. We do plan to test other tunnel rams on this 421. Maybe eventually even that Alki Digger one, because that'd be really, really nice. I think it'd probably beat this one. If it doesn't, I'll be shocked. Then good luck everybody trying to find this puppy. The only disadvantage, and I'll say you, if you're choosing to get one of these, the linkage sucks. Because with them off like this, usually you have a linkage bar that comes straight up and you get your carburetors. With this one farther forward than this one, the linkage kind of is in the way. Really, there's a bracket that goes here that does it. He didn't have one, so it was kind of more tricky getting it to work. That's the only disadvantage, the linkage, and trying to find one of these. But these are gold to me. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Remember, I do not port cast iron heads, and I am no Superman. You guys take care.